Without further ado, I really want to introduce Chad Emerson, who wrote this book about Disney and going to go behind the scenes of secrets of Project Future. Each and every one of these books are on sale here tonight. If you want to get them signed, they make great Christmas presents for those Disney lovers in your life, and he will sign them. But we're really excited to see your presentation tonight.
So how it's gonna work tonight. I'm gonna spend about 20 minutes talking about how Walt Disney ended up in a swamp in Central Florida. And then the lovely and talented Matt Mell will take over, and he's going to talk about these wines you're drinking, which is owned by Walt's second daughter, Diane Disney Miller, and her husband, Ron. They own Silverado. So he's going to spend a little time talking about the wines, and I'll close up with about 5 minutes worth of wine trivia. And we have some swag for the winners of wine trivia, so if you get the guess right. You may not realize this, but everyone thinks about Disney World as a place you take your kiddos or your grandkids. It's actually probably in a single location, the most significant wine destination in America, in a single site. Not as big as Napa or Sonoma, but in a single resort, more wine is poured there than any other resort in the United States of America. That's a big deal. And so, but before we do that, I got started doing this. I used to teach law school in Montgomery over at Faulkner, and I was teaching a property law course. We were just visiting about, how did you write this book? And next thing I know, I was writing some magazine articles for the industry. I write a column called Large Park Report, for if you've ever picked up tourist attractions in Parks Magazine. And wrote an article about the legal, how, Disney actually had 2 new cities created just for him by the Florida State Legislature. That's a lot of mojo. They make cities for you, right? I don't think any of us have that mojo. They created cities just for him. They did things which were never done in the history and have never been done. And so Betsy was reading the manuscript I published in the Florida State Law Review. And she's like, take out all these footnotes and some of this legalese. This is actually pretty interesting. He built Disneyland in Orange County, California, and he built Disney World in Orange County, Florida. What are the odds of that, right? What an interesting little piece of history there. And so when we decided to write the book, we didn't know what to expect. We adopted our 2 daughters from Ethiopia, and we have our 3 boys, 3 older boys. This book paid for 2 international adoptions. And what that told me was, if you write a book about Disney, they'll buy it, okay? They'll buy it because it's about Disney. And, the Amazon reviews are pretty good. But they'll buy it. And what they really found, the feedback I've had is a lot of people want to know, in this era of Discovery Channel and History Channel, how did the story behind the story happen? And so that's what Project Future is all about. Project Future was actually one of the code names for Disney World. It was a lot of intrigue and a lot of literally hired spies, former spies, to help him do this and buy that land, buy 27,000 acres without anybody knowing that you bought 27,000 acres. This would be impossible to do today. So we're going to do a little presentation here, walk through the timeline. You probably think of Disney World. Who's been to Disney World? I assume if you're here. If you haven't been, it's just someone brought you along. You probably think, I was like, how did you end up here? You probably think of Disney World as this wonderful, sparkling, we have a former cast member right here, right? This wonderful, sparkling place where nothing goes wrong, or if it does go wrong, it's immediately fixed, right? Drop a piece of trash on the ground, come back 30 minutes later, just do it just to try to be, it's gone, right? Well, it hasn't always been like that. In 1959, Walt realized that Disneyland was so successful that he wanted to do a sequel on the East Coast. Nowadays, you can fly to California pretty inexpensively on Southwest. Back then, it was a multi-day journey, right? Even if you're traveling by plane, you had to stop 5 or 6 times. He said, as I want to go, I probably capitalize on the market on the West Coast. And so he went over there and flew to Palm Beach. Anyone been down to Palm Beach? Whoa, there we go. Palm Beach, and met this really eclectic character named John MacArthur, a billionaire insurance magnate. And John MacArthur had some land which was in the, if you go down I-95 now, it's on the non-ocean side, just swampland down there in Palm Beach. And Walt found it, and they spent a weekend together driving around, carousing, doing all kinds of crazy things in apparently his convertible. And at the end of the weekend, Walt struck a handshake deal to buy 10,000 acres from John MacArthur to build his East Coast park. 1959. Roy Disney, Walt's brother, flies over, and Roy was the business guy, Walt was the visionary, and Roy says, oh, my brother messed up, we need more like 12 or 15. Now, when you're dealing with an eclectic, eccentric person, it's not always the most stable reasoning. And MacArthur said, you know what, we had a handshake deal, you're trying to back out of this? I'm not going to do it. Walt flew over and said, oh, Dad, ignore Roy, he was off the ranch. No, I'm not going to do it. But for Roy asking for 2,000 more acres, and all he was doing is asking for more land. He wasn't trying to renegotiate the price. Walt Disney World that you visit today in Central Florida would be just west of West Palm Beach. It'd be a completely different location. But the deal fell through. And Walt, though, was still interested in doing an East Coast project. So he's from Marceline, Missouri, had spent formative years in Chicago and the whole Missouri area. And he decides, you know what, I'm going to try something in St. Louis. The Bush family and other city leaders recruited him to come there, and he basically inks a deal in principle, another handshake type deal, to build the Riverfront Project, recognizing that Disney, to be successful, needed to be open 365 days a year. This was going to be a massive indoor park. Some of the rides, your favorite rides today, like Haunted Mansion, really had their birth in this concept. It was going to be, you go inside, and there's 4 different floors of Disney attractions. And a lot of reasons fell through, including something that Disney didn't want to serve beer there, and you're in Anheuser-Busch world, and they insisted on that. A variety of other reasons fell apart, and so the St. Louis project didn't end up happening. So his appetite had been whetted, though. So he ends up touring, going to, ironically, after the whole St. Louis, he went to the Seagram Tower in Niagara and looked about doing a project there. Looked in New York. If you, some of you who may know about the World's Fair in 1960, a lot of the rides are from the World's Fair in New York City in the Meadowlands area. Looked at building a project there. Actually looked at putting a giant dome over the Meadowlands and building a park inside there. Realized that was a little bit even big picture for Walt. Even looked at Washington, D.C., which is interesting because the only Disney park to ever close, trivia, it's called Disney's America. It was actually a theme park built in the Washington, D.C. area, opened up, operated for several years, ended up closing down, basically on the site that Walt looked at once. And so he looked at it, he kept scouring all around trying to find the right location. They settle on Central Florida. They realize, you know what, all this northern stuff, Midwest stuff, we're going to have to do these domes or inside. Let's try to find a warm place that we could operate 365. So they started looking below the frost line in eastern U.S. Toured Central Florida. There's a famous plane flight that Walt took with several of his leaders, who I'll talk about, including Buzz Price. And they landed. Who's ever been to the Citrus Tower in Florida? Anyone at Citrus Tower? That was the attraction in Central Florida. There wasn't much in Central Florida. The Citrus Tower near Claremont was what you went up there, and he went on the Citrus Tower, looked around, saw all this land, realized it was warm, realized that he could buy this land if he could do it secretly, pretty inexpensively, hopped on the plane, told his people as they circled one more time, this is where I'm going to build my Disney World. Okay? They land in New Orleans on the way back. They learn then what happened that same day. John F. Kennedy was shot and killed. And it puts a damper on the whole flight back. They land, everything kind of goes into, but he says, you know what, still, Central Florida was the place. So he hires a gentleman named Paul Hellawell. Paul Hellawell is the most important person in the history of Disney lore that you never heard of. Okay? He was a former OSS, basically a World War II spy, and he was practicing law in Florida. Walt hired him to lead the effort to accumulate the land. Walt knew he was looking for about 20,000, ended up with 27,000 acres of land. To buy that, even before there was Twitter and all that stuff, would be hard to do in secret. So he hired a spy who practiced law to do that. All right? And it worked. They ended up buying, in the summer of '64, ended up getting options on these tracks right here. These are the Dimitri family, the Hamrick Bay Lake tracks. They don't sound like much. That's where the Magic Kingdom, Epcot, and Hollywood Studios are. They bought that land. They got an option. No one knew who it was. They were using code names. Project Future was the code name for this project. It was also sometimes went by Project Winter and things like that. If you go through the book, we actually had a project for every season, right? He had a Project Spring, a Project Summer, a Project, and all these different projects, all these different code words. In fact, when I published this, my publishing company was AYEFOUR Publishing. Spell it out. I4 Publishing, okay? Why I4? Well, that's one of the code names they use. Why do they use AYEFOUR? Because one of the reasons Walt settled on Central Florida is because he got an inside tip from the Florida Department of Transportation that Interstate 4 was going to be built connecting 95 and 75 from Daytona down to Tampa area. And he also got a tip that they were going to extend the parkway, or the turnpike, Florida's turnpike, from just south of Orlando all the way up to about Ocala. And guess what happens? If you go through there now, Walt said X marks the spot. That's where I-4 was going to intersect with the turnpike. That's where he had to be. He knew all of a sudden this swampland you could access driving down the East Coast or driving down Chicago through the Parkway or through I-4. So they bought this land. Next thing you know, he holds a series of meetings. In fall of 1965, Governor Burns officially announces that they're going to do this. Actually, Governor Burns announced it, you notice that, in late October. He wasn't supposed to do that. Okay? It's not in the book because I couldn't verify this. Most of the stuff I got was from first-person interviews and depositions from back then, which is, if you're ever going to write a book on history, depositions are very good because they're under oath when they're saying stuff, and you can usually rely on it. Burns, as the story suggests, might have got a little bit tipsy and went to somewhere and started talking about how Disney's coming here. Of course, they scrambled. Then they officially announced it on the 15th. They still had not announced exactly where it was going to happen, and so they go through and they start the planning process in 1966. To do this, though, Walt required three things. He said, Florida State Legislature, you have to create two new cities for me. The city of Bay Lake, city of Lake Buena Vista. And I need an improvement district. Well, this has never been before. I mean, imagine someone coming into the Alabama legislature and say, oh, by the way, we'll relocate here, pick up big Polaris, Remington, if you'll create us two new cities, right? Two new, I mean, not fake cities, but like Celebration, but like real cities, okay, with city councils and things like that. They created the two cities, they created the improvement district, and what that allowed Walt to do, among other things, some of which they have done, have not, is control the land development all around it. But you know that Disney World right now, if they wanted to, could create their own court system? You could go to Disney jail. They could create their own police force. They have their own fire force. They could build a nuclear power plant. That's in their enabling legislation. They created the widest authority. There was basically nothing that couldn't be done because, again, he's going to redevelop a swamp. So all this was going on in December of 1966. Walt passes away prematurely. He's diagnosed with lung cancer and dies about 2 months later. The project was still not far enough along that most of the people involved in the Disney company said, let's pull the plug. They were going to drain 27,000 acres of swamp. Okay? They said, we can't do this without a visionary. This is where Roy steps up. Roy, who had scuttled the Palm Beach deal. Roy steps up and says, as long as I'm alive, we're going to build my brother's project. That's why when you walk into Disney World's Magic Kingdom, you see a big picture, not of Walt, a big bust with Mickey Mouse, a big statue, not with Walt, but with Roy, because the Magic Kingdom and Disney World got built because Roy Disney got it built. He's the hero behind the story. So, we go forward. They create the legislation. Here's Roy right here signing with Governor right there. There's the signing ceremony. They sign this. This guy right here is legislature. You can't see the TV. He looks like, oh crap, what did we just do? We just created two cities for this guy. To build a what? And what he pitched is Epcot. It was about a theme park, but Walt always viewed the Magic Kingdom as a way to finance Epcot. Had Walt lived, just be 85 years old. If he would have built a city, Epcot, you would not be riding Maelstrom or Wonders of Life or all those kind of rides. It would have been a true city he wanted to create. That's why when you look through the neighborhood legislation, it looks like you create a city. Why? Because that's what he's looking to do. Unfortunately, Roy couldn't pull that off. It was very, very complex. They wanted to figure out a way to have a city but not let anyone tell them what to do, which is kind of hard to do in a democracy. And so, but there is still residents of Disney. City of Bay Lake has a city council. City of Lake Buena Vista has a city council. You could be an elected official from Disney, from the city of Disney's, and they're all employees of Disney's, and they're all at-will employees, and so you can guess how they vote. November '68, there's a lawsuit filed. Disney sued itself basically with the Florida legislature because no one knew, is this legal to start making cities for private entities to give them all this power to delegate it? As it turns out, the Florida legislature, so Disney got with Florida and said, let's sue ourselves. We need to find out. We can't in 1975 find this out. Oh crud, this is all illegal. And so it gets approved as being legal. Disney sued itself, and the Florida Supreme Court said it was legal. First major press event in 1969, and then some of you, I don't know if anyone you were there, in October of 1971, it opens. There's Roy in front of the Magic Kingdom. In one of the truly more interesting postscripts of this type of thing, this is Roy in October of 1971, opening the park that only he could make open because of his brother's death. Within 60 days, Roy's would pass away also. He literally lived long enough to open Disney World. Pretty poignant story. So when you see and you go down there and you enjoy all the different Animal Kingdom, all the different rides, ask yourself, how did all this happen? It happened because Walt had a vision, Roy made it, and the Florida State Legislature and the governor said, we're going to create a place unlike anywhere else. And they have. Think about this. More people go to Walt Disney World on vacation than anywhere else in the world. Okay? So that's just a short kind of summary of if you want to buy a book, get it signed. Hate to be a hawker, but I'll stick around here and do this. We're going to talk about wine some a little bit, though, because one of the things that was really near and dear to Walt's was wine. He didn't ever drink in the park in front of employees. He would probably be shocked to know that now at the Magic Kingdom you can get really nice wine and a Chimay Blue. But he always understood that there's a part of life that you need to enjoy. So I'm going to turn it over, as I said, to Mr. Matt Mell. That's the story behind Disney. That is like the flyby version. I wrote this book so that you can read it in 3 hours or less. Basically, hop on a plane at LaGuardia. You can finish it by the time you land at OAI. So we'll talk. I'll come back in a little bit and talk about Disney wine and give away some swag. But Matt, let's talk about Silverado wine. Cheers.
So we know that both the Disney brothers died young. Well, Walt had a daughter named Diane, and Diane was living in California. Disneyland was there. That's where they made their original beginnings. She wanted to become part of the fabric of the society of California. She wanted to be part of the culture there. So what is the culture of California? Wine. So in 1981, her husband and her, Ron Miller and Diane, purchased Silverado. 3 years before that, they purchased the Miller Ranch, which is in Yountville. And that was a very important purchase because that was the way for them. Basically, once they built Silverado, it became Silverado. In 1981, they built the first winery there. And this was something that people were all very excited about Disney coming to Napa. They were also very fearful in the fact that Disney was coming to Napa and it was going to be Disney in Napa. And they were very, a lot of locals were very concerned. Well, she put that to rest by saying she's not going to expand. She sold her grapes to the local winemakers, the vintners who ended up winning and awards from her grapes. So after a couple of years, they became friends and they kind of realized that, well, she's not here to take over Napa. So they said, you know what, you should start making wine. You have great wine. You have a beautiful place. Now, Silverado, it gets the name Silverado because Robert Louis Stevenson founded Silverado and planted grapes in 1888. It's named for the mine that was abandoned in the late 1800s on the top of Napa Valley, Silverado. So he was a miner, and so when he planted his grapes, he said, what I'm doing is I am prospering grapes and the vines. So she took that and ran with it, basically, and followed that philosophy to some degree. So it's nice to have the capital to be able to choose how to do it. She hired a winemaker named Jack Stewart, who was a brilliant young man, and he said, okay, I'm going to do everything to make this be as organic as California. We're going to fit into the fabric, and that's why they sold their wine for the first couple of years to other people. Well, 1983, they said, we're going to start making our wine. So they began to make their wine. And the first year they make a Sauvignon Blanc and a Chardonnay. And they do about 1,700 cases of those two. 2 years later, they produce 3,700 cases of Cab. Wow, 3,700 cases. They're like, okay, this is what we're going to be about, Cab. We have a lot of things that we're about, but we're going to be known for Cabs. So they decided that that's what they would do. Slowly but surely, they developed. They brought some more property. They brought an old Mount George, which is up kind of in the mountain just north of Howell Mountain. It's a small vineyard, 1,600 acres. It wasn't being farmed at the time. It had grapes and vines that had been abandoned, basically. So they took the winemaker and they refurbished it and they started to grow there. They didn't do anything for 7 years there. But a weird thing was happening. In 1986, their first reserve was released. 3 years later, their Cab, their 1983 Cab was released. They're like, oh, this is great. We got a great response for it. Everybody's liking it. Wow, we are known for our Cabs. So slowly but surely, they develop into making Merlots. They also make a Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc. They tried some other things, but they're really known for their Merlots, their Chardonnays, and their Cabs. They do a beautiful rosé, and I was just out there a few weeks ago, well, it's about a month ago now. The rosé was only being purchased, only being sold at the vineyard because they had sold so much of it, and they wanted to keep it for them. Luckily, the state of Alabama had gotten some prior to that, so we have the ability to have that today. So in 1993, just so happens that, well, they get the number 3 wine in the world. Guess what it was? A Cab Reserve. It was 1989's Cab Reserve, and it finished number 3. But it finished number 1 in the world is Cab. The Wine Spectator is the number 1 Cab in the world. So, wow, we've got something. So now the demand for their Cabs is going very aggressively. So they say, well, what do we do for this? So slowly but surely they purchased some places in Canaris, some small vineyards called a vineyard, and developed 2 or 3 different areas. So now you can have a reserve Cab. And what they did is they said, we want to make this about being Silverado. So they bring all the grapes to Silverado, and they blend them, and they make their Cabs from it. Now they do, the George Mountain, they do make a distinguished Cab from that. It's called Geo. It is a beautiful Cab. It was only a state only until this year. The state of Alabama got 3 6-packs of this wine. 6-packs of this.
Where'd you put yours?
We got a 6-pack, and we did Silverado's national sales rep was here about a month and a half ago, talking about the wine. She was with the winemaker, and she said, we're going to be having this come in. Well, she told a few people, and they said, oh, well, we got to get it. We were able to get 6 bottles. Those 6 bottles were sold that night, and pretty much were gone. We ended up getting 8 because 2 people did not take 2 bottles, so we had them on the wall. They lasted about a day. But so slowly but surely, she became, in 2013, she passed away. But her family, she has 7 children, and they are very much winemakers of Disney. If you know how famous people's families have difficulties because of all the money and so forth and so on, her family has been able to avoid tough times. Where the other daughter, and I'm not sure of her name, Sharon's children have had a very public battle as far as after she died. Sharon died very young, 53, 54, and they went to war basically on who was going to get the money. It was very ugly. And Diane was very upset about it at the time and wanted to make sure that that never happened to her children. And so she kind of made arrangements so that there'd be no debate. And the children are very still much involved in it today. And I will tell you, the Disney, they have the Disney customer service model. Because I walked in about a month ago, I was there, and I didn't have an appointment. I walk in, and I'm just taking some pictures. I've got 15 things to do. I'm meeting a winemaker in an hour. And this guy comes out from behind the counter and goes, what are you doing, sir? I said, oh, you're here for a wine tasting? He said, no, I'm just taking some pictures. I've got an event at my wine shop. It's my first year in business. I talked to him for 2 seconds. Come here. So he goes and he takes me down and he shows me the cellar. That's beautiful. They take me upstairs. He says, this is the vineyard. He explains the vineyard. He says, now come up to the private deck. This is for our members, Silverado winery members only. And it's a beautiful deck. And the difference is this deck is looking over to the view on the left. The deck on the top sees the view on the right and the left. So it's just amazing. You can see the whole valley, really. And he gives me a big magnum. He takes a picture with me, a couple pictures, and he's like, is there anything else I can do for you? And I said, this is unbelievable. I was there literally 25, 30 minutes, and I got to see everything I want to see. And as we're leaving, he goes, and I'll let Susan know that you were here and came by. Well, they followed through, because when Susan came to talk, she's like, "Man, I'm so happy you came to visit." And I'm like, you know, a lot of things get disconnected. That was the kind of service that Disney service. The wines you're drinking tonight, the Cabernet, the Merlot, the Chardonnay, and the Rosé are all beautiful wines. One of the important things that they really wanted to do is to make price-sensitive wines. These wines could sell for a lot more than they are. They are very reasonably priced what you get. They're known in the industry to be that. It is the fact that they have the financing to be able to do it, that they're in it to make a profit, but they're in it for the love of the wine. And that's something that is important, and I think that's something that Disney has taught them, their fathers taught them, to give a great product at a reasonable price and not to try to gouge people. Because when they were number one, they could have raised their prices. They didn't. They expanded and a lot of people don't do that. The model is, let's bring your bottle price up and maximize your profit. They didn't. They expanded their profit, and they're making so that they could continue to keep their prices. So anyway, that's Silverado.
Good. What's up? That'd be great. So what Matt didn't tell you, the rest of the story was, so a friend of mine, and we were out there for the International Downtown Association. We meet up with Matt a day later, have an amazing experience at Stagecoach and this place, and he mentions Disney. I was like, "You went to the Disney winery without me?"
He was ready to tell me.
I was like,
he's like, "That's not on our trip. You really?"
Oh.
I'm like, "Oh."
Stagecoach, come on. You can take it. No. But anyways, all right, so if you're here, it's probably because you love Disney and probably wine in either order. I'm not sure which order. So we're going to do some trivia here. We have some giveaways. Yeah, we'll throw the little... I'm going to say it here, so if you win, you can come pick anything you want. If you have kiddos, like has not been warned, don't worry. And a couple more things. Actually, we've been throwing a little Disney or Universal prize if you happen. So let's talk wine. Wine and Disney. It is the wine destination in America, arguably, if not more. Let's talk some facts. Here's some wine facts. You'll get a load of this. All right. So Walt Disney World cast members who are sommeliers, at least the sommeliers, since 1997. This is 97, okay? 774 level 1 sommeliers. 774. 30 level 2 sommeliers. 4 level 3 sommeliers, and 2 master sommeliers employed currently by Disney. Matt, how many master sommeliers are there in the country?
In the world, there's 260.
260. About 1% of them work for Disney, right? Think about that. That's how big wine is there. Another little fact here. Who's ever been to the California Grill at Disney's Contemporary Resort? That's the resort where the monorail goes through. Okay, Robin, some of you, man, have. Okay, who's ever been to California? It's the very top there. It is, I shouldn't say favorite. It's one of my most favorite restaurants there. At the California Grill alone, guess how many for the first prize? Okay, guess how many, raise your hand, sommeliers are employed by that one restaurant alone right now? I'll take 3 guesses, see who's closest. 3? Rob? 7? 10. Oh, right here. 6.
Wait, there's a...
Okay, we'll do 3 at a time. So once you guess once, you can't guess again until everyone's guessed. Okay, we'll do it that way. So it's kind of like The Price is Right. You all missed by a lot. But the closest was 7. They have, alone at California Grill, 20 sommeliers on staff. 20 sommeliers at a single restaurant. All right, come pick a prize. You get whatever you want there. You can have a, y'all come pick that. You got to pick it now because someone else is going to want something. So, or I can pick it for you. Oh, you said 7? Oh, okay. Rob, well, come on up. Take a pick there. Okay, next trivia question. All right, who's ever been to the Epcot Food and Wine Festival? Okay. So, Walt Disney World, you think, where's the longest running food and wine festival, any recreational destination, not cities, but recreational? It's at Epcot. It's the longest running food and wine festival in the world at any theme park. How many years has it been running this year? We'll take 3 guesses. This year. 20? 30? 17. I should have just stopped because you guessed it right. The 20th anniversary, 20 years of wine festival at Epcot. So pick your prize. Longest running wine festival. So you went to it. All right. So you still get to pick swag, doesn't it? All right. Next. Walt Disney World. Here's more. Here's cool about wine. If you really like wine, you got the lanyard there. Okay, we got some of the prizes. Walt Disney World is home to the largest offering of South African wines anywhere in America. Okay? In other words, one resort at Walt Disney World, you can get more South African wines than you can get any five-star restaurant, any Vanderbilt, things like that in the world. So the question is this. She's ready to vote, but this two-pronged question. What resort and how many different South African wineries are featured at that resort? How many South African wineries? South Africa, probably as wine goes, probably the biggest on the continent of Africa, right? All right. Where?
At the Animal Kingdom Resort. I can't remember the
Okay.
name, but was it Safari?
Animal Kingdom Resort, and how many South African wineries are featured in its different restaurants?
28.
28. All right, next guess. We have two more guesses.
I don't know, but Animal Kingdom all too.
Animal Kingdom, okay. Okay, we're going to say this, it's Animal Kingdom. All right. So how many South African wineries would you guess? You said 30,
28.
28? 20? Okay, one more guess. No one has a guess. I mean, you get swag.
35.
Yep.
Animal Kingdom 32.
Would you say?
28.
28, 32? Answer is more than half of what you said. You're right. 65 different South African wineries are featured. Come pick a prize there. 65. I didn't know there were 65 wineries on the continent of Africa. All right. Come get a prize. We got an extra one. Here you go. Come on up there. We got 3 to give away. So come pick a prize. All right. Last question, and then I'll stick around.
One thing I want to tell you,
Yes, ma'am.
the maelstrom is no longer.
Yes, it's gone away. It is.
It's now some kind of frozen.
Yeah, the famous ride in Norway at Epcot is no longer there. So, all right. So the last question. What I'll do after this, I'll stick around. There's again, thanks to Matt and Steph and their entire team for hosting us. There's lots of great Silverado wine, and other wines, and the Church Street Triple to be purchased. They get some more snacks you can do on. I'll sign some books up here. $10 American, cash your check. I'll sign it. Buy every relative you know. They'll like you. So, all right. Last question. Last trivia question. And since we have 2 prizes, the winner gets both these prizes. Yeah. Oh, I got swag on there. I got swag. My kids play with things that I could sell on eBay for $1,000. I was like, it's just piles there. All right. So, who's ever been to a AAA 5-star restaurant? Which one? Okay, good. Who's been at AAA anywhere in the world? Okay, some great restaurants. Yeah. If you've been to Vegas, you've probably been to several. There is a AAA 5-star restaurant at Walt Disney World. It's not all turkey legs, right? There's actually some of the finest dining. In addition, blue. That's the one I've been to. And so, in addition to all of Wolfgang Puck is there. Morimoto just opened a restaurant there. I mean, some of the finest chefs. They also have some of the finest culinary teams, including their own AAA 5-star rating. So the question is this: what AAA 5-star restaurant at Walt Disney World has the largest wine cellar in any theme park resort in the world? And how many wines are in that cellar? So you got to get the restaurant, and you have to guess how many wines. That's why I get 2 prizes. All right, so first guess. You've already guessed once. I'm sorry. Let me open it up. Okay, right here. Okay. Victoria Albert's 300. I'm not going to tell you that that's the restaurant yet, though. So I'm not. This is not like Animal Kingdom. So keep guessing. We got 2 more guesses. No one's going to even guess? $2,000 at what restaurant? No idea. Okay. It is Victoria now. Okay. Victoria and Albert's, 5-star dining at the Grand Floridian. The chef table alone, there's a 2-person chef table, can be upwards of $1,000 each per meal. Yeah. Nope. Yeah. Don't bring your kids. That's the only place at Walt Disney World that is not a nightclub that does not allow kids, no matter how well they're behaved. And I've heard there's lots of stories, but seriously, they're really, really good kids. Sorry, you can't come to Victoria Albert's. So Victoria Albert's, you said 3,000. You said 2,000. 300. So Victoria Albert's has the largest wine cellar of, when I said theme park, any resort in America. Think about a great resort. Think about the Biltmore, Grove Park Inn, or anywhere you can go in Miami. The largest wine selection, okay, in a single restaurant in a resort. Yes? 4,000. 4,000. Okay. 6,200 bottles of wine are in the wine cellar at Victoria and Albert's. 6,000. How many wines are here in here today?
About 1,000, 1,200.
About 1,000. So multiply this 6 times in a single restaurant, and on any given night, you can order 700 different bottles of wine at Victoria and Albert's. Those are big, big numbers. That's why when we say that Walt Disney World is not just about the mouse, okay, it's also about the wine. So hopefully you learned a little bit about how when you go to Walt Disney World, why it's there. You learned some great information from Matt, how the Disney family actually owns the wine, cures wine, and how the Walt Disney World Resort should be. If you haven't been there on a wine trip, it's a lot easier to get to than Napa, and you can have wines from around the world, a larger selection than even a place like that. So thanks for coming. Enjoy your wine. Wherever you